obviously, when we come to the question and answer session, you will turn on your cameras as you try to ask questions. So without further ado, because we're about 5 minutes late, our first speaker is Mr. Simon Gituku. Simon Gituku is Research and Fiscal Policy Manager at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Simon has a PhD in economics from Kenyatta University, has 10 years experience in public policy research and analysis, and previously worked at the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, who are our neighbors here, as a policy analyst. And his areas of expertise are industrial, international, and macroeconomic analysis. So I think he's in the right place. So Simon, please start with your the first presentation, and you have 15 minutes. I'll alert you privately when you have 5 minutes to go. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame and the IEA team for having me in this conversation.
Kelvin, please switch off your thank you. Kelvin, please switch off your camera. You should only have the camera of the speakers. Thank you. Go ahead, Simon.
Thank you, Kwame, and the IEA team for having me to be part of this conversation. I am glad. So, as you have said, every crisis creates an opportunity. So I'll get started with the presentation. Based on our experiences here at CAM, what the topic is about COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya, opportunities for local production and existing gaps. As a way of introduction, we know that from 1990 to 2008, we have experienced hyper-globalization characterized by what is known as global value chains or global supply chains. And while the system is quite governed by these global value chains, which account for about 70% of world trade. And there are several factors which has characterized this emergence of these global supply chains. And the first one is the role of the WTO, particularly through its dispute settlement mechanism, which has weakened, especially during this time when we have populist governments emerging in countries such as the US. And we know the trade conflict that has been there between China and the US. Preferential trade agreements such as the EAC, COMESA, which has reduced trade policy uncertainty and reduced trade barriers. We know even in the EAC we have a mechanism for dealing with non-trade barriers. Advances in technology and transport technology. For example, they said that the world now is fat because of globalization and the entry of China into the WTO in 2001. These global value chains have, one of the things that has happened is that firms have been able to unbundle production into tasks performed at different locations to take advantages of different factors. For example, a lot of manufacturers in the US relocated to China to take advantage of low costs, availability of large pool of experts. They have the skills, and also to take advantage of the domestic market. And one of the implications has been such production fragmentation means that intermediate goods and service cross borders several times along the chain, often passing through countries more than once. So when that is the case in the world trade, any disturbance has severe consequences. And these global value chains have increased integration of world economies, such that a disturbance in one country is synchronized across the world, particularly for these big countries. And you remember the global financial crisis in the US, which originated in the US 2008 and caused the famous trade collapse when global trade declined by 10%. There has been other temporary shocks to the global supply chains. For example, I have listed about like the 2003 outbreaks of SARS, the Fukushima nuclear disaster, and the tsunami. And one key feature of these shocks is that they were one-off event, temporary disturbances to the world trade. We have now the COVID-19, which has caused severe shock to the global supply chain without precedent in living memory. We have not seen this even during wartime. And countries have experienced shortages, particularly because of their reliance from imports from China, which is now called the supply chain contagion. And the impact of COVID-19, unlike those shocks temporary shocks above, this contagion is going to endure for many years to come. The pandemic has made countries to realize how dependent they are on supplies for China, which accounts for about 28% of globally manufactured goods. Most of raw materials, even by manufacturers in Kenya, they originate from China. And that's why even here at CAM, a lot of conversation by manufacturers is the cost of imported raw materials, which are not available locally or in the region. I want to highlight a few examples of world economies' dependence of China, and here lies one of the opportunities. 25% of intermediate inputs used in high-tech exports such as pharmaceuticals, machinery, motor vehicle.
Dr. Gitutu,
for US,
Dr.
China.
Gitutu, your slides are not moving. Please make sure your slides are moving. We can't see your slides. We can only see the first page. Please get them moving. Yes.
I don't know what is the issue. Let me check. Sorry, there are some pop-ups. Are you able to see?
Yes, now we can. Thank you very much.
Sorry for that. I was not aware that they are not moving. So this is why we are. Let me just alert me again if there is a challenge. I just want to highlight examples of world economies' dependence on China. And I was saying 25% of these high-tech manufactured goods for US, Japan, Korea, Mexico, and originate from China. A car plant in Serbia had to halt production because they could not get parts from China. 75% of blood thinners imported by Italy come from China. 60% of antibiotic components imported by China, by Japan, and 40% by Germany and Italy. Italy and France, they come from China. So the realization of countries about their dependence on China has led to call for more self-reliance and reshoring, taking back to the factories back to US or other parts which they consider to be safe. Few instances, investors now are considering Canada, Mexico, Central and Eastern Europe regions as the alternative to China. What can we do to make Kenya such an alternative that the manufacturers are looking to relocate to? Japan announced a $2.2 billion fund to attract corporates back to Japan, away from China. Market Watch in the US expects that the reshoring of pharmaceuticals and medical supplies back to the US will create more than 1 million jobs and inject more than $250 billion into the GDP. In the US still, some senators are calling for increased taxes for corporate income for those manufacturers in China, and others are proposing subsidies to attract firms back to the US. This is what is the conversation that they raise at the moment. Before COVID-19 pandemic, focus by firms, manufacturers, was on cost optimization, cost cutting, just-in-time production. You don't need to hold inventories because you make your orders, you estimate that in the next 1 month I'll have raw materials, and then you process and you sell. But the pandemic has uncovered weaknesses in the global value chains system that requires all of its part to work like a clockwork without any hitches. That is what has been happening before, without not to mention those temporary disturbances I talked about. So there will also be a drive to evaluate, other than reshoring, nearshore option to shorten supply chains and increase proximity to customers. This is also another opportunity. So we need to position ourselves as a country to take this advantage. This is according to the World Economic Forum. With that background, now we are in a good position to see the opportunities that can emerge from this crisis. Reshoring of global value chains. Need to package Kenya as one of the alternative destinations. This is also a broad area of conversation. There is need to step up investment promotion efforts. We already have KEPROBA as an institution, the Kenya Export and Promotion and Branding Institution. Support to reshoring efforts, specifically tracking and authentication advancement. This is another opportunity to allow, there will be in soft and hard infrastructure. Can we be able to take advantage of this? Because manufacturers would want to allow to see visibility across the supply chain. So there will be advanced tracking tools to help prevent counterfeit, stolen goods, and mishandling of customer information. That is an opportunity. Opportunities for nearshore option to shorten supply chains and increase proximity to customers. This is World Economic Forum. What are the opportunities? I don't have an answer to this question. If we want to produce this intermediate product for manufacturers in the EAC, we need to think which are these wins we can have in the short run. Another opportunity is there will be drive to increase resilience against global supply chain shocks, because you order your goods.
Your slides are stuck again.
Oh, sorry.
Please get it going.
I think I think when I do the full screen, that's when I'm getting a challenge. So I think we'll work with not the full screen. Okay, thank you. So increasing resilience, one of it is, so there will be that drive by manufacturers and businesses to minimize contagion or shock to the system. And one of it is to develop the agro-based value chain. This is also a very broad topic, but I want to give just a few highlights. For example, soybeans manufacturers, specifically because they have invested locally in this value chain, but they cannot get enough seeds from carrot because the carrot does not have enough budget. So we end up importing from Uganda, and you know the challenges that are there at the moment at the borders. Cotton, we don't produce enough. Manufacturers are investing in Uganda and Tanzania. We are importing from there. I was also able to know that last year that actually we can produce cocoa in Kenya with research in Western Kenya, like in counties like Kakamega. We have to think outside the box during this period. I have just given a few highlights because this agro-based value chain is also quite a broad topic. Exploitation of mineral deposits. For example, we have iron ore, which has been discovered in places like Kitui, but we know the conflict that has been there, particularly about land compensation. And we can have integrated steel mills in Kenya. Last year, Kenya imported 1 of 4 billion of imports. The other one is coal. You have seen component manufacturing, pharmaceutical, medical equipment. They are matters of national security. You saw countries like India banning some exports. So, as of 21st of March this year, a total of 54 governments had implemented some types of export bans for some medical supplies. That is an opportunity. How can these countries housing dinners get them from Kenya? Electronics, automotive, component manufacturing, bushes for vehicles. Can factories in the US source them from here? Those are the things we need to think about. What are the gaps? One is hard and soft infrastructure gaps. We have huge gaps in terms of physical infrastructure, soft infrastructure, particularly institutions, which has also become very clear with this crisis. As the general business environment, our politics and such, all that matters so that we can attract these businesses here. Inadequate capital and skill set. Some of these where we can have component manufacturing, they are both capital and skill intensive. We have a gap in that. The other existing gap is inadequate intergovernmental coordination framework, particularly for the agro-based value chain, because we know agriculture is a devolved function. And here at CAM, we have been able to unpack the issue, particularly the coordination framework between the national and county government, which has that weakness has also been uncovered by this COVID-19 crisis, particular coordination mechanisms. The other issue is small domestic and regional markets. This is important for reshoring. And what is a market? If we have a human being who does not have an income, that is not a market. So this market, if I am a market for sweets, I have to be physically present and also have the income. The income for motor vehicle, I must have the requisite income. So those are the issues we have, which we can overcome through the regional integration initiatives. We have had the internal conversation with manufacturers, such as paints for automotives. The market is very, very small because we produce the locally assembled vehicles are also very few. So these are issues that we have to deal with to incentivize mass production. The last one is lack of domestic or international standards for some innovations. I have given an example there of face shields. There is no, because what has been happening for standards when the manufacturers are producing these PPEs, the ventilators, they have been borrowing from OECD countries or the EU. They are something like face shield. We don't have standards. So by the time it is we come up with domestic standards, there will be some delays. And there's a manufacturer who has actually has opportunities even in the region, but we require that standard mark. So it is an ongoing process. So those are some of the challenges we are facing. As I conclude, we'll make 3 observations. With the climate change, extreme weather events and new outbreaks of infectious diseases causing disruption to global economic system in the future cannot be ruled out. So the pandemics, tsunamis, they are likely to increase in the future. We have to be ready. And there is therefore an urgent need to build resilience against global supply chain shocks. And one of them is to develop regional and domestic value chains, such as the agro-processing. Companies should also focus on preparedness and response to risk. This is according to the World Economic Forum. So those are my thoughts, and I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. Again, to remind our guests that We'll have all these presentations available at the end of the meeting. They'll be distributed together with a report. In addition to that, there's a chat box right on the menu bar that's floating on your screen. Please use that to ask any questions, specifying who you'd like to answer the questions at this moment, and then we'll come to it formally during the question and answer session. So we've learned from Dr. Giduku that there was a shock, obviously, to global supply chains, and the response that most countries have taken is actually to try and go towards safety. So basically, price and cost efficiency are not as big an imperative. I think the imperative right now is to secure supplies for medicines and all things that are required within within a country. That has raised opportunities in Kenya for component manufacturing, many other things to satisfy local demands and the regional demands. But I think there are challenges that endure, and the one that most caught my eye was the question of standards. Because yes, it's not just enough to say that, look, we're going to have everything manufactured locally, but whether they match the proper standards for all those, whether the technical specifications and standards are matched, I think is an enduring challenge. So in addition to the fact that there are opportunities and they're vast, I think there are challenges that require. So there's no free lunch, which brings me now to our second speaker, Honorable Ochieng Beo, who's the chairman of the Kenya Fish Marketing Authority, and he'll be talking about the fish value chains. Honorable Ochieng Beo is a former member of parliament for Kasarani constituency, and in 2017, he was a senator candidate in Migori County. He's presently the chair of the Kenya Fish Marketing Authority, which is a state corporation, and the object and purpose is to market fish and fisheries products from Kenya. He's also the chair of the Aquaculture Roundtable, going under the acronym AQUAT. And AQUAT brings together all players and stakeholders in the fish marketing value chain in Kenya. And he's also the founder of Lakeview Fisheries. I think some of you have seen this covered in the press. This company is engaged in vertically integrated tilapia commercial fish farming in Lake Victoria, that's cage farming. And Lakeview built the first women's and youth-owned cage aquaculture operation. The company has trained hundreds of youth on fish cage farming as an alternative source of income. So he'll be talking to us about what opportunities exist in the fish value chain. And Honorable Beo, welcome. Please turn on your camera and your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you see me? Thank you.
Yes, we can see you. Thank you.
Okay, fine. I thank you very much for allowing me to at least talk to you something about fish. And I want to take a little different dimension because, you know, I'm a local farmer, fish farmer, and I have a passion in fish. I want to squeeze this in because I think it's important for the community to understand that things are changing, and maybe the pandemic is giving us an opportunity which we never knew existed. First of all, I just want to get you back to, which we'll not see on the screen, is the fact that the Fish Marketing Authority is a state corporation just established in 2016 with main purpose of marketing of fish, Kenyan fish in the regional market, local and internationally. It is promoting sustainable use of fish and helping a lot of other activities that we can identify with. We are also in that in the Fish Marketing Authority. Our main objective is also to identify fish market needs and trends and advise fishery stakeholders accordingly. You know, there are so many other things that we do in this in the Fish Marketing Authority, and it's something that we really need to get ourselves involved in. Now, to the main focus, I just want us to know that the fishing industry actually is handling at least 65,000 fishermen. When I mean fishermen, it's fishermen who actually are on the lake doing wild fishing. and we have 60,000 and rising of the fish farmers. Fish farming is a new phenomenon, and just about 60,000 of that is now, people are on the lake and on the ocean, on the land, and everywhere. When I talk about fish farming, I'm talking about fish activity that takes aquaculture, that takes place in the lakes, in land, in all the waters, in the ocean, everywhere, in ponds, wherever. That's where you have the fish farmers. And would you believe we are handling people who depend on this as workforce? It's more than just over 1.2 million Kenyans are involved in this. And which means the number is rising. And for export purposes, without talking about what we harvested and consumed locally, we exported more than 5 billion Kenya shillings as export of fish to the European and international markets. That means there's a lot of money. You know, our contribution is about 7.7%, about 0.6% of the GDP. I want us to note that consumption of fish per kilogram per person in Kenya today is only 4 kilograms per person. The recommended consumption of fish by World Food Program is 11 kilograms per person per year. Just imagine that shortfall. We need to start moving from 4 kilograms to 11 kilograms for eating fish. At the same time, I want us to note that if we only produced 120,000 metric tons of fish last year, the estimated production and consumption is estimated to be 400,000 metric tons of fish. We only produced 120. Jamani. Imports, which we are claiming Chinese have dominated us, do you know that it's only 20,000 metric tons estimated? That's all we imported from China, which means we have some whooping over 140, 160,000 metric tons, 260,000 metric tons required to be produced. I'm only trying to show where we are. Fish is where we are not in, we don't talk about it because we don't know about it, but I want to let you know that in fish, there's vacuum. Now, we've been looking at situation as it is, the situation analysis. You're just beginning to see what is on the first page that you're seeing on the screen there. The COVID messed us up. We used to have very simple production methods, very simple cold chain. That cold chain is no longer there. Why is cold chain no longer there? You can never get fresh fish directly because we have been interrupted. There's a great interruption of supply chain of the fish, which means therefore there's vacuum. If you can move the slide to B, you will see what is happening that I've just explained, that there is vacuum in terms of growing fish. Because right now we are in the middle of this pandemic, the supply gap is already there. Now, if the supply gap is there, how are we going to fill this up? I've just shown you that you need 260,000 metric tons to be able to meet the supply gap. We have systems in which we need to now get into, the aquaculture technology transfer. We have things like RAS system. RAS system is the latest technology in producing fish, recirculating aquaculture system. That RAS system, we have aquaponics, which we need to get ourselves involved in. I'm glad Simon talked about soybeans. They need to be planted. These are now the gaps. We need to, if you have RAS system, you have aquaponic, you have soybeans, that is the main protein for fish feeds. You are getting home and dry, but these need us to get ourselves involved in production. RAS system, young people, I'm talking to young people today. This technology transfer, people like myself, we're now too old now. We need to see young people getting involved in fish activity. So the RAS system that we're now getting into, the aquaponics, you know, that helps you do exactly what Simon was talking about in agribusiness, which helps you to recirculate the same water full of nutrition of the ponds and which we use for growing fish into growing other vegetables and all those kind of things can be done by the young people. Everything is there for you. During this pandemic, we have realized some very crazy activity that since we are having a very perishable commodity, we have been having very post-harvest losses. We have lost a lot of fish because of this. Why? Because we can't transport them from source to the consumer. It has not been possible. The waterfronts have been messed up. You know that the rains messed up the lakes. That is on the lake, on the ponds, even in the ocean. We couldn't even there was no way to transport fish from anywhere to move it up into the consumer. Now, this means we now have to create newer technologies of how to transport this fish. How do you get fish from wherever, from the source to the marketplace? We now need young people to get into innovation and create ways of carrying these boxes of fish from where they are with ice and everything else to be able to reach the consumer. That's a gap. Nowadays, everything is turning into technology. And if that's what it is, how are we going to be able to sell our fish? Nowadays, I understand we are now going online to sell our fish. My children have been selling fish online. They are all in America. But I can tell you, when we're harvesting, we are selling fish to Kenyans in homes online, and they're buying like hell. I want that to be the norm. The new normal is we need to learn how to change and know how to market ourselves. When you talk of fishery and fishery products, after you have harvested the fish and you are maybe added a little value, there are a lot of things that remain. Where adding value means maybe you're filleting and doing other things that you want to do with it to make it have more into it. Yes, but what remains is also very important for the Kenyan community. Would you believe that in Kiridi, right now, we are making fish leather? We can make shoes, we can make handbags, belts, and all that coming out of the byproducts of fish. At the same time, this is where we can also help ourselves in making fish feeds, manure, mbolea, and other things come out of this. And these are gaps that are just yawning, and I want the young people to start looking at how to get involved in the byproducts that are there. Now, as we're going through this, everybody is wondering, because I said I'm talking to young people, how are they going to be able to get money to get kind of venture? You know, when you're talking of fishing means caging, fishing means ponding, fingerling, doing fingerlings, hatcheries, and all those kind of things. I just want to let us know that the government is not sleeping. The government has put a lot of effort through State Department of Fisheries to fund the fishery sector. The World Bank and IFAD, FAO, IFAD put in, right now, Kenya has been given 15 billion Kenya shillings for aquaculture. And this is going to be done, is being handled within about 15 counties, some in Western, in Central, and Coast. But basically in Central, Eastern, and Nyanza, Western. That money is there. I am challenging the youth to get involved in the IFAD-funded programs that are in Homa Bay County, Migori County, Kakamega County on the first phase, coming to Busia, Kisumu, Kisii on the second phase. Moving down the first phase, we have Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Meru, and moving to Isiolo, and some other parts of Central Province, about 7 other parts of Central Province, which means, and Machakos, which means we are going to be having 15 billion already set aside to help fish farmers to move through the value chain. The value chain, the total value chain. And there we are, from growing all the way to marketing, up to the market. We have a World Bank program with another 10 billion Kenya shillings in the coastal province. That is money that is sitting there waiting for us. And I'm just looking at it and saying, hey, with this kind of opportunities that we have, what else do we need? I'm challenging the youth, because there's so many other business opportunities that exist within the framework of fishing. I'm challenging the youth that with all these monies available, let's get up. Because some of us are already using these in these techniques. We cannot, I was telling a friend yesterday, that when these opportunities are there, come out and get them, because we cannot wake up, chew for anybody, put it in your mouth, and help you swallow. Because if I can chew it myself, put it in my mouth, chew it, I will not let you swallow, I will swallow it. I want to end up there and say that the opportunities exist enormously in this sector. And what I just wanted to add there is that there is something that I have been meaning to talk about in public, but I now just quietly now in this corner, I want to raise the awareness that there's something called mondo in Kijaluo. It's a Nile perch bladder. All the Nile perch you in the lake or in the lake have what is called a bladder inside it that helps it float. This particular item is more costly than the Nile perch itself. When the fisher folks harvest the Nile perch, it is quickly taken out and quickly exported to China, leaving you Nile perch, the other of the flesh. But if we can, I'm told that the Nile perch bladder is used for making capsules for medicines. Now look at how many medicines how many capsules we are making a year of selling. Now, if Kenya and the young people can get themselves involved in these, do business plans that work, look at how we can now tap into this simple bladder that is exported to China and brought back in terms of making medicines and all that. I thank you, and I give you all the challenge to move on to this industry, which is still very fresh and requires.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Mbeo. I mean, I'll sum up fast. I think I agree. I mean, something that is not as realized as we should is the fact that Kenyans lament about the importation of fish from China or wherever it comes from. But the truth is, as you've demonstrated, there's just local production is just 1/4 of what is demanded. Consumption is even lower. So there's huge scope to expand both the consumption and production of fish. The opportunities for the industry for value addition, as people talk about manufacturing, going to leather, providing feeds, and even fertilizer production. I think opportunities and the scope for expansion exists. Technology transfer is a necessary part. So in addition, what you've told us is that it's an integrated industry. I think that's it relies on transport. And so when we have shocks such as what we've had, which makes it difficult to make transport from one place to the other, I mean, to transport goods and services, to use transport services to take goods to one part of the country to the other, it creates a structural dent on the industry. So just like everybody else, I think you're asking us that we should move, to the extent that it's possible, we should move back as quickly as is possible. And you mentioned something that's called, so I'll modify your statement. For those of us who are wondering what this bladder is, actually the correct word is MAWS, M-A-W-S, which is basically a flotation device that they use, and it has several industrial uses, in addition to obviously being used as a repository for drugs to be ingested in the body because it's a natural product. It's also used in making sinews, which are just used to stitch the body because it definitely dissolves. So I think you've demonstrated to us that throughout the value chain, there's enormous opportunity to create value and to expand opportunities for jobs in addition to creating employment for people. So thanks a lot, Honorable Mbeu. We go to our third presenter. I'll remind us all, the chat boxes are open. Please send in your questions, and then we'll line up those questions for the question and answer session, which will start in a bit. So our third panelist is Winnie Gore from Winnie Gore Consultants. She'll be speaking about the challenges and how she's responding to those challenges in the environment. Now, Winnie has over 13 years experience in corporate communications, that is brand public relations, public affairs, event management, and media relations. She's worked with various organizations, including the Gina Dean Group, and managed various organizations, both in the public and private sectors before she started consulting. She has a good understanding of the Kenya media landscape and has run various media campaigns. Her event management skills have also enabled her to undertake both local and international events, conferences, and assignments. In addition, Winnie has spearheaded various successful campaigns, one of those being the European Union's Water Towers campaign, and also organized the IFC's CASA 10 anniversary conference in Nairobi, held in January last year, and the Global Steering Group conferences in Nairobi and Accra. She'll probably tell us a little bit about these, as well as the communications campaign for the Global Teachers Prize winner, Mr. Peter Tabichi in Kenya, Uganda, Accra, and South Africa, respectively, and among other projects. So thank you very much, Winnie. I'm pleased to read your very flowery bio sketch. So please, you have 15 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame. How are you, everyone? My name is Winnie Gore. As Kwame has mentioned, I don't think I need to delve much into who I am. But as is mentioned, I run a corporate communications agency, which basically helps us to just communicate, help businesses to communicate basically with the internal and external audiences. So basically what we do is we talk to different audiences, which is current and potential customers, employees, key stakeholders. I was pleased to get the invite from Wedera concerning the challenges that we're basically currently facing. And as I was reading a book the other day, it stated that tough times never last, but tough people do. So I believe we are all here because we want to see how we can navigate these waters and just make a commitment to stick our necks out during this period. So of course, the pandemic has brought lots of opportunities, but also we cannot negate the challenges that we've faced. So I'll just look at the various areas and elements of communications that we deal with. What are the challenges that we faced and how we can be able, and we have been able to navigate this. So I'll start with event management. Of course, all of you know how event has been affected. In the initial stages, we had a lot of cancellations of events because people were afraid of large crowds. And this was, of course, because it created and presented a safety issue of participants. There was also travel restrictions for those who do like conferences and all that. There was also postponement of some of the events, and most organizations, I think, are still on a wait and see mode. But we have also had opportunities where people are exploring other options. For instance, venue relocation, as opposed to where people used to meet indoors in hotels and all that. We are finding people exploring other options like outdoor events, press conferences that are being held outdoor. For instance, the press conferences that the President and the Ministry of Health have been holding. So, of course, this has also created other opportunities. We are finding a lot more people are moving into virtual events, which, of course, have just helped redesign the event space. Whereas before, people would have to meet in bunches and people would meet in hotels or grounds. People are now enjoying entertainment in the comforts of their homes, or even meetings and conferences like this. We're also having hybrid events where it's a mix of live and virtual components. So you can have like a launch where a couple of people can be present in a physical location, while the rest of the, while the rest of the audience is actually attending remotely. So of course, this has seen an influx in video campaigns, marketing launches over Zoom, Teams, rapid IGTV execution, like we have virtual concerts. So locally, we've seen a rise of virtual concerts like Studio Tisa. We've seen album launches like Nashinsky's Lucky You album, which was launched a couple of months. Basically, I think in isolation, brands and consumers have embraced a lot of online activities. This has also just helped in people socializing, but in their own confines. So you're finding people are actually downloading apps like House Party, Zoom, and all that. Of course, there are benefits to some of these virtual events and all that. You'll find, of course, people are saving up on their finances. So the financial benefits is you have high profitability since the parties are actually eliminating the need for third-party costs. Kwame, I think you can agree with me. You don't have to provide breakfast for people today, but we are still able to run this event. We are having, of course, organizers reducing their expenses because we don't have third parties, and then we're still increasing our return on investment in terms of our potential. There's also increased attendance, whereby people in before or pre-COVID, you had people were limited to their budgets based on the amounts that you had to spend. So you could have an event for 100 packs, whereby now you're able to actually have about 1,000 people in attendance because it's all virtual. And of course, it's decreased people who have to move from one geographical area to the other. And of course, it's favorable to the pocket. But other than that, there's also, you're able to measure a lot more other than just the attendance. You're able to get feedback, you're able to get all these online because a lot of the platforms that have been created, like Zoom, are able to give you real-time inbuilt just measures in terms of success and all that. As for public relations, we have a lot of the professionals who are actually taking advantage of this opportunity right now because it's helping in building capacity. So we have internally a lot more of the employees are talking to the employers. So you're finding a lot of the employers are actually taking more time with their first target audience. It's shown that 76% of employees have said that they have gotten more information from their employers during this period other than previous times. Yeah, only 6% said they are looking to go back into their workplaces, which means that we will have to communicate more virtually as we go by. Externally, we are having digital media, which is currently thriving. We are having people who are moving from traditional advertising, that's out of homes, your billboards and everything else, and trade shows. And people are actually doing a lot more online campaigns. And these, of course, are keeping people engaged. Think of how I would appeal that you would think of how your business can actually fill a need for people during these times. How can you be able to talk to your audiences through social media? We are finding people are actually diversifying even their service offerings. Guys are going into making masks. People are offering more online schooling. Kids are actually being engaged a lot more online. So we actually need to take advantage of social media because it gives us a larger audience as opposed to when you have to talk to different publics on a face-to-face. So you can use boosted posts to get more people and reach a new audience. You can actually use your social media ads and just think about coming up with engaging social media campaigns that can help spread some of the positivity. We also have to, with social media, you have to be a bit more flexible because content keeps on changing from time to time. So you also have to be very versatile and agile to keep on changing with the times. If you're a nonprofit, for instance, this is the best time to actually just be able to raise some of the funds. You can get aggressive with your donation efforts. You can show the need you're feeling in the community and give people multiple ways to help, such as in monetary support as well as items. We're seeing a lot of people who are raising funds to feed the needy through social media. So this is, I think, a very opportune time for us to do that. Creativity, of course, has gone on a notch higher. We are having a lot more creators and influencers coming up right now. So during this pandemic, we are seeing people are actually tapping into their innate creativity. So we're having a lot more people creating videos like on TikTok, Switch streams, digital outlets have a lot more influx, and a lot more of us are able to actually become content creators because, as we are saying, the future of digital is basically in content.
Sorry, Winnie, can I interrupt you for a sec?
Yes.
There are two gentlemen who just signed in. Please switch off your cameras. We should only have Winnie's camera on so that the recording goes on smoothly. So Mugendi and Noel Wandera, please switch off your cameras now. Noel, please switch off your camera. Turn off your camera, please, Noel. Okay, go ahead, Winnie. Thank you.
Okay, not a problem. So basically what I was saying is we are having a lot more influencers who are demonstrating a sense of community. They're focusing on people and purposing to give a lot more than self-promotion, a lot more than just the product. So we're seeing engagements with brands and partnerships are actually being created due to the contents that are being created. So influencer marketing essentially just gives a brand a human voice. It allows your brand to become trusted to your peers, especially during this crisis. Partnerships are thriving when the message is focused on people. So right now, it's best if you can engage on a person-to-person as opposed to just constantly trying to boost your product. We need to drive a positive brand perception. This can only happen through the education, inspiration, and philanthropic means that a lot of the brands are actually taking part in. So when you look at some of the statistics, you're finding, of course, a lot more people are spending more time watching news. So that's about 66%. We have about 54% that are actually watching YouTube. So you could actually post a lot of your content on YouTube. We're having 47% are just generally spending time on social media. So it means we can't negate that. We are having a lot more people are streaming their services. A lot more people are downloading applications right now. A lot more people are listening to podcasts. So these are all channels that you can actually use to communicate our various services and products that we have. With the relentless rise of the digital economy, this industry has emerged around digital transformation. So I don't think things will go back to the way they were before. There's definitely a lot of uncertainty about what the new normal means, and companies will need to speed up digital transformations and deliver on their promises. Lastly, I'd also just appeal for us to just get into a lot more social responsibility, because as we said, we don't know what the post-COVID-19 world might look like, but the expectations of brands to be very clear about what they're doing to support jobs, communities, societies in rebounding successfully will be with us for quite some time. So we are seeing a lot of the local organizations that have actually stopped what they were doing and gone into giving back into the society. We are seeing restaurants like Nyama Mama who are taking steps to feed the nation. They're going into slums like Kibera, Kawangware to feed some of the needy. We are having companies like Airbnb, where in some countries they're actually giving out rooms for health workers in their territories, and mobile providers like Safaricom that are helping people get like food through bonga points and all that. So work has changed, and I think we all have to appeal to our social responsibility. Brands as well as individuals are finding more opportunities to work with the less privileged, as I said. So this means that we have understood the fears and the needs that the people have, as well as the psychology behind all this. So instead of just broadcasting sales messages through advertising channels, we are doing more in real time and meaningful ways. This kind of creativity, I think, has created more flexibility and human understanding, and has of course brought in a lot of opportunity for both brands and PR and communications agencies are actually very instrumental in bringing this to the forefront. So clients are constantly looking for ways to keep their stakeholders informed and keeping the pipeline as warm as it can be, especially considering e-commerce sales. So in conclusion, I think we need to just bear that in the long run, the return of live events will be a significant cultural moment. And of course, all of us will be very happy to be out there and to interact with people, with large crowds. However, live experiences, as we know, might not ever get back to the normal. So things will definitely be different as you're going forward. So once people are able to congregate again, those will not magically reopen and immediately welcome back large people and in-person engagements. So it means that we'll still end up seeing a lot more of these virtual events and all that. This is becoming the new normal. So social closeness will follow a slow curve backup. Geographies will definitely vary. Venues will vary. People's mindsets will vary. And experiences will need to be redesigned to address these variables. This means that we will need to be a blend of live and digital. We'll have a lot more millions that will want to stay connected via technology, even when we don't have to anymore. So I will close this by saying there's a quote that I saw from a lady called Temitop Ibrahim, who just said, we just have to stretch our minds and we will reach beyond our current reality. Thank you, Kwame.
Okay. Thank you very much, Winnie. So I think you made clear that one of the things is that there's some structural change. The emergency has changed the economics of event management, I think in very clear ways. It also changed the consumer side behavior because, as you said, many more people are watching news, they're sitting back consuming digital content. But notwithstanding that, there are new opportunities that are available as well. There's some uncertainty as we wait for the pre and post-COVID world. Many people are on that spectrum about things going back to normal. Certainly not. But what I wonder about is how far it will go towards the other world. Whether it will be a radical change or not, I think it's time to observe, because that too will have its own opportunities and challenges. Thanks a lot. So we'll go now to we'll go to our final. Looks like someone has their microphone on, but okay, we'll go now to our final panelist, who's Mr. Charles Okadia, who's the director and founder of ChemSols Limited. ChemSols Limited is a chemicals company which was registered in February of 2009 as a private limited company and started manufacturing activities in February 2011. The vision of this company is to be a leading chemical company that will contribute to enhancing the lives of individuals in the region through creation of employment, and I think providing quality products as well. So I'll invite Mr. Okadia to speak to us. I'll be speaking about how in the emergency COVID-19 emergency and the changes that were made necessary through policy, what effect has that had on the farm? How these have been converted to new opportunities? Those challenges have been converted to new opportunities, and what he thinks will happen in the near future. So, welcome, Mr. Okadia. 15 minutes as well.
Thank you. It's okay. Okay, good. Thank you, Kwame, for the opportunity. Now, in terms of, I'll be talking more about the medium enterprises, though, concentrated more on the manufacturing area. Sorry, I'm trying to sort out the screen first. Yeah. Sorry, there is a bit of a challenge on just give me a minute.
It's fine. Okay.
Just give me a minute. I need to get to the screen properly. Yeah, before the sorry. And next. Before the COVID epidemic, in the manufacturing industry, after the launch of the STAWI, when the government put some financial instruments such as the STAWI, we were seeing a positive move in the government towards ensuring that the micro and medium industries can be able to move properly in terms of the production and creation of employment. And I would just want to put first two highlights. The first was what the government launched a financial instrument called STAWI, although this one was more for micro enterprises. It didn't cover quite the medium enterprises, but at least it was a move in the right direction. And we were hoping that the government will be able to continue with the same program for the medium enterprises. So that was a good move before the COVID. There was also the reduction in the withholding VAT, which released more funds for manufacturers to be able to engage in other activities. But we also had our challenges within that period. This has been a big challenge for a while. The clearance of goods initially at the port of Mombasa, which used to take a long time. And then even with the SGR, the matters have not really improved much, because you find sometimes if you import goods, it takes up to 15 days. Now, that is a very long time to get goods cleared. So that is a challenge that we had. We also had challenges in taxes as medium industries, because most of the time the government tax system does not really distinguish between micro and medium enterprises as opposed to big corporates. We are all subjected to the same taxes, and this is a big disadvantage really for the smaller manufacturing companies. Recently, there is even a tax that has been introduced by counties, which is really does make sense, because now if you are supplying goods, say from Nairobi to a county like Homa Bay or Kajiado or Narok, you are expected to pay some money to be allowed to take your goods to shops in those areas. Like, for example, as my company, we make paints. So if we take paints to Narok, to hardwares in Narok, we are expected to pay the county government of Narok 42,000 shillings every year. Now we have 47 counties in this country. So if you remove Nairobi, because that's where we are, it leaves us with 46. So if in each and every county you are going to pay more than 40,000 just to deliver your goods within the same country, it doesn't make sense. So these are some of the taxes that the government needs to look at to make the business environment more conducive, particularly for the medium enterprises. And that will make us be able to expand the businesses and employ more people. Access to finances has been a major issue, and for the medium enterprises. And for medium enterprises to grow to a level of corporates, the government needs really to step in terms of access to finance. I'll give you an example. Recently, there was a reduction of the MPC reduced the rates from 8.25 to 7.25. But if you go today to a financial institution to get a loan or an overdraft, that is not considered at all. In fact, the costs have gone up in terms of finances. So the government needs to have a system in which the medium enterprises can be able to access funds at a lower interest rate to be able to grow. Before COVID, we had a system of the supply chain was really good, but that changed drastically. When China, of course, the whole problem started in China, spread to India and other countries, because mainly the raw material for the paint industry comes from either China or India. A few from the Koreans, but mainly from those two. Now, when China closed, because then locally now the local stockists of certain raw materials did not have them, and that increased the cost of our production so much. I'll give you an example of one material which we were buying at 150 shillings before the COVID pandemic. Immediately the pandemic started, the cost first went to about 550. At the moment, it has settled down, it has settled at around 350. Now, if we are making products based on that, you can see we'll have to pass it to consumer, and that has increased actually the cost of the consumer goods in a very big way. So the COVID has had a great impact in that area. And perhaps even as I think Simon mentioned earlier, maybe even as industries, we may need to start looking at how do we make some of these intermediate products locally in the long term. The other effect which we have had there is, of course, we never used, as a small enterprise, we cannot keep a lot of stocks. But now with the irregularity in getting raw materials, we have to move to a system in which we keep slightly more stocks than what we were doing. And of course, that has its own financial implications. But I must say that the government overall has also taken some very good measures to try and cushion not just the manufacturing, but generally the business community. The reduction, for example, of VAT from 16 to 14% has helped in improving the liquidity of companies. The reduction, the 100% tax exemption on pay for those employees earning less than up to 24,000 has also helped a lot. Pay reduction, for example, has helped as well. We have the reduction in corporate tax, but that is something we'll only realize next year because it took effect when the returns for this year were almost done. The other thing, in terms of economic stimulus, the government has the actions taken by the government, like increasing the amount of money we can transfer through mobile. That has enabled our customers now to pay more through the either till or pay bill, and that has been quite helpful during this period. The government mentioned that there will be loans to companies administered through the bank. This has not come out clear yet how it will be done, because I've checked with some of my banks and they are not even sure how it is going to be done. So perhaps it would have been good when government makes such policies that very clear avenues of such loan administrations are also explained, so that the manufacturers can take advantage of that and cushion us, particularly during this time when there is a problem in cash flows and low turnovers. The restructuring of non-performing loans has also helped, because then it has eased pressure from the banks of the repayment of loans. The government also announced the waiver on railway development levy and import declaration fees for manufacturers. However, this is a government policy that has not helped all manufacturers, because it has been done through KM, and this is a bit unfair on medium enterprises, because it means that one has to be a member of KM to enjoy this. Yet this is a government policy that is meant for all manufacturers. It should have been left open and be monitored by a government agency. Whether it is done through KRA, it would have been okay. But ensuring that for one to enjoy it, you have to be a member of KM or go through a KM has disadvantaged the medium enterprises that are in manufacturing greatly. So this is one area that I think the government needs to relook at and make it more open. There is a policy which the government introduced on exemption on pre-shipment inspection, and almost a similar policy like this, but it was left for Kenya Bureau of Standards to monitor. And so any manufacturer can go to Kenya Bureau of Standards so long as you meet the basic requirements, you qualify. That is the same thing that should have been done on this, rather than putting it through KM. But it's a good policy which should be able to help, but poorly implemented. The other measures which the government has taken on the COVID and related to employment, of course, we have been asked to keep social distancing. That means few workers are now reporting physically to work. Others have to work from home. But it also had its own negative effects because it meant that we have less workers who are coming, and particularly in manufacturing, sometimes like machine operators, you find is a skilled work. So you cannot be able to keep everybody at home. So that has been a big challenge, trying to keep certain workers at home while the others are coming physically to work. So one of the things we've done is to have alternative production of different materials so that different machine operators come on different days. But that lowers productivity of the company, especially at this time when companies would want to maximize on the orders and that are available so that they are supplied in time. So that's a flip side of that. The challenges faced, as I mentioned earlier, there is shortages of raw materials, and that has not eased fully. It is still there, even up to at the moment. And one of the other things that has happened is most suppliers from either India or China that have started supplying, some of them have changed the terms of trading. You find where there were credits, now those are being removed because of the effects of the COVID that they have had in their own countries. So this will have a long-term effect on the way manufacturing organizations operate in Kenya. There has been, of course, reduction in sales because consumers are not having that enough disposable income to buy goods to the extent it was before the COVID. And this is a trend that will take some time to improve because most companies have either laid off workers or workers are working on reduced salaries. So as a result, you find that people go to very basic essentials for their survival. And as you know, paint is an aesthetic product. So people would rather spend money on food than go, spend it on items like paints. So that is an area that is going to be a big challenge, particularly to manufacturing companies that are not in the food chain.
Hi everyone, please switch off please place your microphones in mute. Please mute your microphones as we go ahead so that you do not interrupt the session. Phyllis, please place your microphone in mute. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I talked about the human resource side. We've also had, of course, salary cuts for not just the medium companies, but this is something that has cut across all businesses. And that's a big challenge that is there because companies we have had to reduce salaries in a way that we remain afloat and sustain the employment at the moment. I talked about earlier about the issues of suppliers, of course, changing terms. And at the same time, the clients, some of the clients had closed during the COVID. They're just opening, and the offtake of goods is not the way it has been before. So this is a major challenge that one has to balance on the revenue that is coming in. Of course, in every crisis, there is always opportunity. And the opportunities that have come out during this time is part of it. We have had to do product diversification, and because there was greater need for sanitizers during this period, we had to introduce that as a new line, something we were not making before. And I've seen very many other paint companies, even the top corporate ones, have moved into this line. And we have looking at different products now that can be able to sustain the business in the long term. We've had to do a lot of restructuring within the company, mainly aimed at cost cutting to ensure that costs of running the business are maintained at the lowest level. The COVID-19 effects are going to be with us for a long time. And of course, then we'll have to face certain realities for a long time to come. In terms of the business, in terms of human resource, we see an increase in unemployment in the country, because not just my firm, but many companies across the board are not going to be employing at this time, because everybody is trying to keep costs at the lowest level. And that will create a very high unemployment in the country, because all colleges are releasing more and more students. That will continue. And if most companies freeze employment because of these effects, that's going to affect the level of employment. The other thing which I'm seeing in the long term here is that more and more companies are going to have flexible working times. The staff that don't have to come to the company premises physically, like the sales staff, are going to be working from home and only come to the office on specific days for meetings. Now, this will be a complete change of culture from what it has been before. And this may continue for a long time to come. In terms of business infrastructure development, if these effects continue, investments in either machinery or plant and equipment is going to be at a standstill for quite some time, because there is no point increasing manufacturing capacity when the offtake is not high. So this will continue for quite some time, because there is the reduced consumer demand, which I talked about earlier, because of the levels of disposable income. So that will continue for a while. But I'm also seeing a change in the way we have been marketing our products. Because of this social distancing, I see more of an acceleration in using the different technology, particularly digital marketing, to ensure that we reach more customers. So those are really some of the areas that I'm seeing from a manufacturing perspective in the medium enterprises that we shall be going through in the long term. But the other thing which comes out clearly is that as a country and as manufacturers, we need to start looking at some of these raw materials that we import, whether we can start making them locally. For example, there are products like solvents like acetates, which we do import quite a lot from China and India. And some of these can be made out of ethanol, which is a sugar byproduct. And we have sugar factories in Western Kenya, and this is an area that manufacturers locally need to start looking at. How do we have proper value chain on this, on the ethanol that we are having, and produce many other products out of it that will help in the paint, not only just the paint industry, but generally the manufacturing industry in Kenya, which uses some of these materials. We don't really need to import them, and is an opportunity that is there for us in manufacturing to start thinking about in a serious way, and not just keep on importing. Because if we have another COVID type of calamity, then what happens? Do we shut our manufacturing completely? So it's something, just a food for thought for those of us in manufacturing, to start looking at in a very serious way on how the country can sustain itself to a greater extent. Not 100%, we can't do that, but at least to a good extent that will make us be able to absorb some of these shocks as and when they occur in the future. I think that is all that I wanted to share with us. My contacts are there in the last slide, and if anybody wants to contact us, you are free to do so, whether you want paints or you want any other discussion further on some of the points I've raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kadia. So you told us about there's a supply chain disruption, I think a point that was emphasized by Dr. Biduko as well. And this has raised costs, beg your pardon. This has raised your costs. It's also meant that you need to keep bigger supplies at hand, which has raised warehousing costs. The interesting one is the differential treatment of farms. And I think, Simon, here you might have to take word back to CAM, to your colleagues in CAM. That yes, I think this is a moment in which government policy should stretch as much as possible to all farms. You then emphasize some of the long-term effects that this might have. And I think that this continues to tilt me towards the view that there'll be no going back to business as usual. I think on the management of people, premises, the supply chains would all completely change. I think one of the things you mentioned here, which many people, I think the Kenya Association of Manufacturers has emphasized as well, is let's think as much as possible about import substitution. There's an opportunity right now to try and develop and tighten value chains within the country or within the region. So it's possible to develop regional and national value chains by virtue of the fact that, yes, getting terms of payments have changed, but also connecting value chains across borders would be a little difficult for the wine. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to pass this now to Waithera Gaito, who will be managing our question and answer session. But before I do that, because this is the last time I'm speaking, I'd like to remind you that the IEA holds these forums every day, or rather regularly. So we have another one tomorrow. We are asking a different question about when would we consider it safe for kids to go back to school. Please look at our website, and if you wish to keep in touch as well, I'd like to welcome you to another one that starts tomorrow at the same time as today. And obviously as well, I think you'll be thanked, but I'm very thankful to the panelists and all of you who've attended. And I'll pass it now to Waithera. Waithera, please take over from here. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for the summary. Panelists, that was very informative. I'm Waithera Gaito, the founder and executive director of Alternatives Africa. And we are very glad to have this conversation today, whereby we're not just speaking about the resilience against COVID, but also taking another step forward to look at what are the opportunities, because every crisis brings with it both challenges and opportunities. We've had a great opportunity to hear about the gaps, started with our panelist from CAM, Dr. Simon Geduku. Thank you very much. There was a lot that you shared, the opportunities in terms of reshoring, support to reshoring efforts, production of intermediary products right here at home, plugging into global, regional, and of course the local value chains. All these are opportunities that are there for us to explore. Of course, Honorable Ochieng Bell passionately spoke to us about the opportunities in the fish value chains, and a new product that is not quite known, the Moors, Mondo in the Luo language, and these are all opportunities that are pretty much not exploited. Winnie brought out a lot of opportunities in an area of space that is really critical to every one of us, which is marketing and advertising. How do you adapt to the new space, which is basically now a virtual space? How do you consider the human touch through influencer marketing? And one thing that I really love that she said is redesigning experiences to address the new normal. And as we open up the webinar to questions and answers, we had a set of questions that we wanted to ask the participants and make it a bit more interactive so that we can get to know the participants more. Stephen, is the poll ready? Stephen?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, maybe I could pass it on to you, and we could start with the questions to make this session a bit more interactive, so that we can also get to know more about the listeners, get to know their opinions, their thoughts, and also the opportunity to also get them to respond, comment, or ask questions to the panelists.
Okay. Thanks, Waidera. I'll take this on from here, and I'll just post this particular question on our chat box. So if all of us can just shift to the chat box. So just to mention that if you log into a chat box, we have a couple of questions. So firstly is what challenges have you been facing? And we have a list of issues that you listed. So just click on one and just let you know that this is an anonymous poll. So your name won't appear anywhere. And also that it's real time. So we'll get the results as soon as we are done with this. So maybe just 2 to 3 minutes as we go along. So just log into the chat box and click on your answer. It's real time as we loading the next set of questions. So we can still go back and forth on the questions. So we'll be posting the next question in a minute. In the meantime, kindly just respond to the one that is there on the chat box. Okay, so even as you go ahead to respond to that particular question, we are posting the next one right now, so look out for it. If anyone has a challenge getting to the chat box, kindly let us know. We'll be able to assist.
I see, Winnie, you would like to respond to Diana's question as we continue with the poll. Winnie?
Thank you.
Yes, Wadira. So let me just try and get back to the question. Dana asked, how can you be able to maintain the human contact even as tech is replacing a lot of functions that we typically do as communications agencies? I think we are having a lot of people trying to adhere to aspects of social distancing. We are seeing some hotels that are actually coming up with conferencing ways that can still be able to adhere to social distancing, whereby maybe they would be able to have 100 people in a room. They're actually doing the 1.5 meter distancing, whereas they can at least have about 20 people. I'm seeing a number of people are being innovative in ways where they can still be able to work with the audiences. Like I've just seen an alert from Galleria where they're saying they'll be having open air events, some like drive-in movies, as opposed to going into a movie theater. You can still go with your car and still be able to interact with other people while maintaining social distancing. So I believe we'll just have to be a bit more innovative on how we are doing this. But for sure, we all crave that human touch. And I believe within the next couple of months, we'll have figured a bit more ways of interacting with people while still taking into account the measures that we need to put into place. Thank you, Edera.
Thank you very much, Winnie. I see that some of us are having challenges responding to the questionnaire. Nevertheless, if you have a question or a comment, perhaps you could just go ahead and ask.
Waidera, can I respond to one by Fiona?
Yes, you can go ahead, Daktari.
Yeah, there is a question by Fiona. Why should CAM influence policies to be done through the organization, yet it is for the whole industry? I think I would wish to correct that misconception, because there is a reduced rate for import declaration fee and railway development levy rates, 1.5 for each, for manufacturers who are importing their inputs. So the law is very clear that the application has to be made through the Ministry of Industry. Then Ministry of Industry will communicate that to, after they do their own internal verification, to Treasury and then KRA. So what CAM does is that, because we are a membership organization, we collect it for all members, communicate, write it directly to the Ministry of Industry. Then that is what the law states. So those manufacturers who are not members of CAM, they still can do that. They just write it to the Ministry of Industry. Then the Ministry of Industry will take it from there, communicate to Treasury, then Treasury to KRA. So that is how it is. So it is, there is nowhere CAM is mentioned in the law. It's just that for the benefit of manufacturer, we take that role, and there is a dedicated officer to handle those issues, including the KEBS issues that Charles mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response, Dr. Giduku. Any other questions from the participants? Thank you very much, Arogoro. You're in SME training and consultancy, and you say you would be happy to help with the presentation. We also have our next. I seem to also be having a challenge with the questionnaire. But if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. I guess if we do not have any more questions, we have 2 minutes to midday. I'd like to say thank you to our panelists that have taken their time out of their busy schedules to spend 2 hours with us and enlighten us on the status quo of their businesses, their institution, as well as the opportunities that have been brought by the COVID pandemic. Indeed, one of the points that was quite consistent from all panelists is that there is a lot of opportunity in the import substitution space. Honorable Mbeo really emphasized the role of the young people, particularly in meeting the deficit in the fish industry. And perhaps, Honorable Mbeo, we will, after this meeting, have a sit down with the authority and see how we can work it out together and present the exact gaps to the young entrepreneurs and to the country at large on where exactly these gaps are and the value gaps, where these value gaps are and how they can monetize them. Bwana Okadia, it's amazing to hear how your company was quick to adapt and diversify its production from paint to the making of, or rather manufacturing of sanitizers. And perhaps that's what most of us need to think. How can we adapt to this pandemic season and ensure that our businesses continue to run and we continue to serve our consumer base or even attract a new one. I'd also like to say thank you to the teams at the Institute of Economic Affairs Kenya, IEA, and the team at Alternatives Africa for the time that you've taken to put together this webinar. I'd also love to say thank you to Kwame, the time he has spent also planning and moderating this event. And last but not least, of course, to the participants. And we hope that you've been greatly enlightened and hopefully you have identified an opportunity that you can plug into and take your business to a new level or even start a new business. That said, I say thank you very much. Unless we've got any questions, we can end the session. Thank you.
There are perhaps the comment from Kwame would sum it up, and maybe you could direct them to have a bilateral after this.
Sorry, I'm not
in the chat.